Hello and welcome to the Board Governance Series. I'm Deborah Scally, editor of Corporate Board Member Magazine for NYSE Governance Services. And today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity priorities for boards in 2016. My guest on the show today is Jeffry Powell. Jeffry is Executive Vice President with Diligent Corporation, provider of the Diligent Board Books portal. So welcome and great to have you today, Jeffry.
Thanks, Deborah. It's great to be here.
So I understand that you and the team at Diligent have been hard at work looking at some of the key trends and especially risk management priorities for boards going into 2016 in this very important area. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and maybe talk about the first trend that you've identified.
Absolutely. At Diligent, we of course take cybersecurity very seriously, and these are some of the things that we've been seeing lately. First off, we're advising all organizations to seek out what is now the holy grail in cybersecurity, which is prediction. Historically, of course, detection was what cybersecurity was all about. Detecting any attacks, trying to prevent them.
Right.
But forward-looking organizations have really started to leverage sophisticated technology to be able to not only try and prevent cybersecurity attacks, but also predict what they will be and when they will happen.
Interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about some of those technologies without getting in too deep?
Well, believe me, I won't be getting too deep because it's very complicated, and as a lowly sales executive, there's very little of it that I can understand. But I think the easiest way to think about it is if you think about the technology that you hear about, for example, the self-driving car, or things that you might be familiar with, such as your Netflix account or Google search, right? I mean, these are forms of technology that we take for granted.
Right.
But what it's doing is it's leveraging data, various metrics, and using algorithms to predict behavior. And so this now applies itself to the world of cybersecurity. There are these programs now that you can run that will really give you a much better view into what types of attacks you're trying to prevent. So it's something that's going to help you not just with what are the up-to-date attacks that you should be looking out for, but even anticipating what you're most vulnerable for and when these attacks might even happen. So it's no longer that you're just like, oh, might I be attacked? But you can actually have a view into what type of attack might be coming your way and where and when it's going to happen.
Right, so that sounds pretty complex. Is that, how much of that would the board of directors be responsible for understanding or even ensuring that it's happening?
Well, that's a great question, Deborah. And of course, one of the things that we get asked by board members is, what, now I'm supposed to be a cybersecurity expert?
Right.
And of course they're not. I mean, even the people who are cybersecurity experts, it's an almost monumental task keeping up with all of this stuff. But a board member has to absolutely understand the importance of it and recognize and implement that their role as a board member in a lot of ways is about risk management.
Right.
And right now, cybersecurity is one of the biggest risk management topics there is.
Right. So what is the second trend that you identified?
So the second trend is maybe not as exciting, but it's about really analyzing and being up to date on your cloud-based services. I mean, obviously everybody's familiar with the cloud now. Everybody, whether or not it's personally or your business, is storing things in the cloud. And most IT departments are happy with that and are used to evaluating their vendors. But as this has become such a predominant practice, what happens is that sometimes employees will be seeking out certain services that benefit them and will go around the IT department. So what this means is that there may be certain vulnerabilities and risks that a company is opening itself up to that the IT department may not even be aware of. So it's not the fault of the IT department that they're not evaluating the appropriate vendors, but if you have too open of a plan, a policy for access on the part of your employees, there may be applications and usage involving the cloud that the IT department's not even aware of.
Right.
So the IT department has to be empowered to always know what's going on, have certain procedures, methodologies, and practices in place so that they can apply the appropriate validation of any cloud-based services.
And I would think also assuming that whatever vendors you are using, you're appropriately looking at those third parties for their practices just like you would your own.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because of course, you're always going to evaluate a new technology, a new vendor coming into your organization, but you need to understand that with cloud-based services in particular, it's an ongoing process where you constantly have to be checking in with them and
Right.
evaluating their practices to make sure that they're meeting the currently required standards.
Right. So what is the last trend that you identified?
Well, the last trend really is not that new of a trend, but it's really that you need to create a security conscious culture at your organization. Of course, it starts from the top. It starts from the board, putting appropriate practices in place, but it goes down through the entire organization. And it's not just a matter of talking the talk, but it's also walking the walk. Making sure that everybody understands the value and the importance of security, that password protocols that are in place are being enforced, that everybody is using the appropriate devices in the way that they're prescribed for use. This has to be set at the board level. The board has to understand the responsibilities of it for them as individuals, and then that can help trickle down through the rest of the company.
Very good, and that sort of ties into the second point you made as well about training and employees and having awareness all through the organization.
It actually does. I mean, most organizations now have training programs and frequently testing on an annual basis or sometimes twice a year, ensuring that all employees understand the security practices at the company, they're up to date and they're following through with all of the prescribed protocols.
Well, very good. Those are all terrific points, and we're certainly glad you were here to share them with us today, and I know our viewers will get a lot of that as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Deborah.
And that concludes the webcast today. On behalf of NYSE Governance Services, thank you for joining us.